Hello, friends. The 1,262 days of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The Russian army crossed the Vovcha River and consolidated its position in the Dnipropetrovsk region near Dachne, according to the deep state map. This is the first consolidation of Russians in the Dnipropetrovsk region, which was recorded by the military telegram channel. At the same time, the Russian military claims that they control Dachne, as well as two more villages in the Dnipropetrovsk region, Maliivka and Sichneve. Ukraine has not confirmed this. The Russians also advanced near the border of the region in Yevhenii. Heavy fighting continues in the Pokrovsk direction. According to a Ukrainian fighter with the call sign Muchnoi, the settlement of Persha is under the de facto control of the Russians, who are trying to consolidate their position. The main clashes are taking place for Troyanda, where the Russians are pressing from the southern flank, trying to advance closer to Pokrovsk. Despite the fact that some positions are held, this does not change the overall situation. The enemy is acting aggressively and trying to expand the bridgehead, supporting attacks with fire and rotating personnel, writes Muchnoi. The approaches to Pokrovsk from the south are under the control of Ukrainian forces, but Russia is trying to undermine the defense with local attacks. A noticeable presence of sabotage and reconnaissance groups is noted in the area of Dachas, as well as to the east, in the Lazurny and Shakhtarsky micro-districts. In general, the enemy's activity is increasing and control around the city is becoming increasingly unstable. The fighting is very serious. The Russians are trying to impose their rules of war on us, but so far there have been no significant breakthroughs, writes Muchnoi. The Russians continue to advance near Siversk, where they have taken up new positions in the Hryhorivka area. The enemy is also making further advances in the Serebransky forest, where they are taking up new positions on a daily basis. Meanwhile, Bild military observer Julian Rupka has expressed the opinion that Russia could achieve a strategic breakthrough on the front in the coming months. According to him, in a number of areas in eastern Ukraine, Russian troops have created conditions over the past 2 years to either capture or blockade 4 groups of cities within a few months. He includes Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad, Kostiantynivka, Chasiv Yar and Toretsk, Siversk and its environs, as well as Kupiansk and the area east of the Oskil River. Rupka claims that in these areas, Russian forces have occupied hundreds of small towns and formed semi-encirclements of cities, in some cases from 3 sides. According to his estimates, they would only need to advance a few kilometers to completely cut off supplies and capture up to 1,000 square kilometers of territory. He believes that such a scenario could bring Russia closer to capturing the entire Donbass and pose a threat to Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, as well as open up opportunities to cross the Oskil and advance on Kharkiv. In the future, according to him, strikes are also possible in other directions, including the Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. This development clearly shows that the offensive in the east is by no means simply tactical and has the potential to lead to a strategic breakthrough in the coming months, adds Rupka. The main topic for today is what Putin and Trump will agree on at their proposed meeting. However, there is no exact information yet about where and when it will take place. One option, in Rome next Monday, reported Fox News, a channel close to the Republicans, citing sources. However, it is noted that the meeting may take place later the next week, and another country in Europe or the world will be chosen as the venue. Or it may fail altogether, since Zelensky told the United States that he will not cede any territory as part of a peace agreement with Russia, and that only the Ukrainian parliament can do this. Russian agencies deny that the meeting will be in Rome or in Europe at all. According to them, the meeting may take place in one of the Arab countries. Putin himself spoke about the United Arab Emirates yesterday, and Lukashenko proposed holding a meeting between Trump, Zelensky, and Putin in Minsk. The second difficult issue is the agenda of the negotiations. The Wall Street Journal writes that Putin may offer to consolidate Russia's control over part of the captured Ukrainian territories, in exchange for the withdrawal of troops from other areas. Trump may approve this, calling on Ukraine and its allies to accept this proposal. But Kyiv and other European capitals will probably reject such a plan, which will play into Putin's hands, since Trump can accuse Ukraine of continuing the war. If the situation goes according to this scenario, Trump may stop intelligence and military support for Ukraine. The United States may also completely withdraw from the diplomatic process, leaving Moscow and Kyiv to continue what Trump has long called Biden's war, the newspaper suggests. Bloomberg writes that the US and Russia are discussing a deal that would secure the Kremlin's control over Crimea and all of Donbass. This would involve recognizing Russian control not only over Crimea, but also over all of Donbass, which would require Zelensky to withdraw troops from the Lugansk and Donetsk regions. The publication clarifies that this is Putin's demand. In exchange, Russia will stop its offensive in the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions along the current front line. The article does not indicate whether Trump agrees with this demand. Bloomberg, citing sources, writes that the U.S. is working to gain support from Ukraine and its European allies for this deal, which is far from certain. The withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the Donetsk region would be a major victory for Putin, who has long sought direct negotiations with the U.S., while distancing Ukraine and its European allies. Zelensky risks receiving an offer that he will either have to reject or accept, agreeing to the loss of Ukrainian territory, the publication writes. According to sources, the agreement under discussion is aimed primarily at freezing the war and preparing the ground for technical negotiations on a final peace settlement. Let me remind you that Putin had previously demanded the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the entire territory of the Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions. Probably, if Bloomberg's information is correct, Putin may present his consent to the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops only from the Donetsk and Lugansk regions as a compromise on his part. There has been no reaction from the Ukrainian authorities to the Bloomberg article yet. A ceasefire plus territory deal is the most realistic version of the agreements that can be reached by Putin and Trump. Publications in the Western press actually confirm this. However, such agreements were already attempted to be concluded in the spring, but Kyiv, with the support of Europe, rejected them. What is the situation now? There is obvious skepticism in the Western media at the moment. The general mood is that the meeting will not lead to a breakthrough, Putin will stand his ground and Trump will not be able to agree with him, and so on. However, for some reason, few people paid attention to yesterday's key phrase of Putin's aide Ushakov. He said that Trump had conveyed some proposals on Ukraine and the Kremlin considered them quite acceptable. The conditions themselves have not yet been officially disclosed by anyone, although versions are already beginning to be published in the media. During the entire period of negotiations, this is the first time that Moscow has officially announced its agreement to Trump's conditions for a ceasefire in Ukraine. In fact, this is why the meeting between Putin and Trump became possible. Another question is that these conditions may change by the time of the meeting. According to one version, this is exactly what happened in early May. Then Moscow agreed to the plan proposed by Trump, which provided for a truce along the front line, recognition of the Russian status of Crimea by the United States, the lifting of anti-Russian sanctions, and guarantees that Ukraine would not join NATO. But then this plan was revised with the participation of Europeans in Kyiv. Some of the points previously agreed upon with Moscow were deleted, and Putin rejected it. It is possible that they may try to do something similar now. Attempts are already being made. For example, yesterday, the media reported, citing anonymous White House officials, that Washington allegedly sets a meeting between Putin and Trump on the condition that the presidents of Russia and Ukraine meet. Trump personally denied this yesterday, but the situation is indicative of the desire of certain circles to replay the agreements. It is characteristic that this fake was carried out, among other things, through the New York Post, which is close to the hawkish wing of the Republican Party. And, probably, this will not be the last attempt to change Trump's plan to such an extent that Putin is guaranteed to reject it. If Washington's proposals remain unchanged by the time of the meeting between Trump and Putin, and they approve the terms of the ceasefire, then another question will arise. Will Zelensky and Europe accept them? Apparently, Washington has already communicated these conditions to Kyiv and the Europeans. After Witkoff's visit to Moscow, Trump spoke with Zelensky and the leaders of European countries. There were no open objections from them, but judging by the waves being launched, primarily by the British media, there is discontent and a desire to change the terms. However, if Trump insists on them, the Ukrainian authorities and Europe will have little chance of rejecting them. In this context, the report by RBC Ukraine is indicative. Citing a source, it writes that after the meeting with Witkoff and before the meeting with Trump, the Kremlin is discussing what territories Russia is ready to give up in Ukraine in order to conclude a deal. It is stated that the discussions are taking place in the format of multi-hour discussions at a meeting of the Security Council. RBC Ukraine is a publication that often publishes insider information about the office of the president, and this news was picked up by many Ukrainian Telegram channels associated with the office of the president. Naturally, the degree of reliability of this information is unknown, but in this case, the mood of the publication itself is noteworthy. It is positive regarding the progress of negotiations between the United States and Russia, and even in some ways victorious. The RBC Ukraine article suggests that Trump put pressure on Putin with threats of secondary sanctions, and this may be an indirect sign that Zelensky, contrary to the forecasts of many Western media, this time agreed with the plan proposed by Trump and will not resist it. The frequency of calls between Zelensky and Putin also indicates that some serious decisions are being prepared. Yesterday evening and today, Putin spoke with the leader of China and the Prime Minister of India Modi, the presidents of Belarus, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and South Africa, with whom he discussed Ukraine. He also personally received the advisor to the Prime Minister of India and the President of the United Arab Emirates in the Kremlin. In turn, Zelensky called the Chancellor of Germany, the Presidents of France, Latvia, the European Commission, the Prime Ministers of Poland, Italy, Albania, the Director of the International Monetary Fund, and personally received the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania. At the same time, among world leaders, the president of Belarus has already played an unexpected role in organizing the meeting between Putin and Trump. Lukashenko has been playing the role of mediator in the negotiations between the United States and Russia since Trump returned to the White House, Time journalist Simon Schuster reports. He said that since the beginning of the year, he began to receive persistent offers from Minsk to conduct interviews, for which a representative of the Lukashenko administration was even ready to pay. At first, Schuster did not understand the motives of the Belarusian authorities, but then he learned that Lukashenko was negotiating with the United States, offering his services as a kind of Putin whisperer. The Belarusian president told the Americans that Putin wanted peace and was ready to compromise, advised American officials on how to keep the negotiations with the Kremlin on track, and assured them of Russia's readiness for good-faith negotiations, despite the ongoing bombing of Ukraine. At the same time, he spoke about the prospect of a Nobel Peace Prize for Trump in case of success. The Americans played along and visited Minsk at least 5 times, and also considered it very valuable to use Lukashenko as a channel of communication with Putin to promote the idea of a summit between Putin and Trump, as they hoped that this would help break the impasse in the peace process. In particular, these efforts by Lukashenko have now allowed negotiations on a personal meeting to begin. Schuster writes that despite Putin's regular refusals to cease fire in Ukraine, Lukashenko was constantly sending the Americans a completely different message. Putin wants peace and is ready to make concessions. These signals fueled hopes in the White House for a quick diplomatic breakthrough and helped pave the way for the U.S. and Russia to announce an upcoming personal meeting of their leaders on August 6th. Now, the outcome of the war that has lasted more than 3.5 years may depend on 2 nuclear superpowers, the article says. Another message that Lukashenko was sending to the Americans was that Putin should be treated with respect. He said that everything could collapse if Trump does not treat Putin with sufficient respect. In the name of peace, you may have to show a little cunning and make some concessions. Even if you cannot understand Putin, treat him like a person, Lukashenko said. In other words, The story of secret negotiations through Belarus may become a prelude to Ukraine's capitulation. Simon Schuster concludes from all this.
Friends, I want to develop and strive for higher quality content, but my 2009 computer does not allow me to do this. If you have the opportunity to help me buy a new computer and make my dream come true, I will be very grateful to you. You will find the link in the description under the video and in the pinned comment. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.